Well, hello, this is Dr. Lemmon again on my Wizards Catch blog, introducing the October talk or a chat blog, whatever you want to call it. I started an association, a little talk with the blogs because some people go to my Wizards Catch YouTube site and listen to these endless dilations on who knows what. And then other people go read the blogs, and I'm just trying to bridge the thing between the two of them, right? It's really tough to have an effective blog and write it in about a page, page and a half, so that people will read it and then shut it down, and then move on, and then kind of let it percolate for a while. That's the goal, right? To keep it kind of short and not explain the meaning of life, but just an idea to chew with. And so putting a little of this introduced kind of links the two together. And that was my goal in doing this. I'm talking about this right now because part of what comes up is some of the terminology and stuff in this blog for October comes from the 2020 work that I did looking at two systems in play. It's not like I'm promoting a dualistic nature or anything like that. All that stuff's been done. And, it's like everything else. They didn't work very well. Most stuff doesn't work perfectly. And so when we start to look at that, it's the reason that it doesn't work perfectly is because there's more variations than what we think. We're born with a bias. We're brought up into a world of a bias. There's a lot more variations than we begin to imagine. And the system produces more variance, which is what we're seeing right now. We're in a time of production of a lot more variance. You're going to see all kinds of variations on all kinds of things. You're going to see things that meant something yesterday, and now they're going to mean something else. That's kind of what's going on as we start to get into more and more of this thing unfolding, right? And I don't look at it as a pandemic or a health crisis or blah, blah, blah. I just look at it as an evolutionary piece. It's an evolving piece. That's the way I look at it. So if you're looking for conspiracy people, you came to the wrong place. I don't have a conspiracy. I don't have a plan. I just think that we need to take a look at what's going on. And I think it's beneficial if we, number one, try to execute a plan that maybe is going to give us a little more neutrality, a little more balance in our life. That's all I'm interested in doing, right? I mentioned a couple things in October, like I said, talking about my idea of two systems. I would call those systems of influence. I really say, wow, if I got an electrical outlet and I plug things in, what does that influence? If I plug a light in, it influences light in a room, right? What do all those things influence? What does relationships influence? How do they influence, and what is the effect of them? That's the way I look at it. It's the level of influence. The same thing with ask a question and get an answer. The answer might be really good, but the question might not have been well put. So you might have got a wrong idea from the answer. It's upfront. That's why I do Q&As, is like people come back and say, well, Chris, you said. I said, yeah, I probably said something in a workshop in the context of that workshop, like everyone else in books and everything else. It's like you just took it out of context. So that's not bad. But if the range is big enough, it falls into some type of context. It goes over here. But if the range is not big enough, we try to get it all into a small funnel package. And then it seems like it's all counter to it, right? It rained yesterday. Is it going to rain today? Well, so yesterday, before it rained, I took an awning down and put it in a shelter so it wouldn't get wet. I wanted it to drip dry for a couple of days. Now today it was much drier. I brought it into my garage. I'll spread it out on the floor, let it dry a little more. And then it was up during the summertime for a little shade. Now I'll fold it up and put it away. You see how the changing seasons require different reactions, different influences, different things that have to be done. This is so common. It's unbelievable, right? It's just so common sense, right? So I'm starting in October to put ideas together. Our goal for the end of the year is what are we going to work on? I think some of you kind of figured out which way we're going to move. I start to look at what the variables are and where the influences come from and how to split that up a little bit. obviously, the package was created in a certain sort of way. I have a story about that. It doesn't mean my story's right, but most certainly I have that in my 2020 blogs. I start to talk about the things inherent in that and what it will actually change in that package of presenting an influence, the created model, the whole thing that we call our universe, a created model, and how that got influenced, right? And so that's altering. So if that alters, then most certainly the world will start to alter a little bit. And we'll just fall into step because that's what we did. When you were born, were you a rebel? Or did you fall in step? Some of us fell in step really well. I was kind of a rebel. And so I understand the rebel piece. And it was, I watched the people in my family that fell in step and they did well. They did well. They made more money than me. They went into a field. They stayed at it for 40 years. They did blah, blah, blah. They were the American dream. And I was most certainly the American nightmare. I did this, I did that. I tried this, I tried that, because that's where my interest went. I was looking at building diversity and range. Try this over here, try this over there. I don't have to be good at this. I just want to know a little more about it. And I don't have to have an answer to that. I just want to know a little more about it. I just want to be able to, because I like to travel, because I like to be able to relate to people in foreign countries. I just love sitting in a foreign country and talk about their sense of values. And I've got lots of stories about those. Not a place in a short little talk, but I'm just feeding that to you. So you start to understand that when I'm putting this together, seem like I'm pulling pieces in, and I'm really trying to tell you that those pieces are kind of from the model I started putting together in 2020. I started saying, here's a model that I've been chewing on and working off of for years. Bits and pieces are starting to come into play a little bit. If I lived another 50 or 60 years, I don't think I'd still figure it out. But most certainly, I'm getting to a point where I have to say, okay, I'm pretty much done with this game. So maybe it's time to move on and do something different. But I'm trying to package it together. I'm trying to present it as saying, here's an idea, not the truth, not the answer to everything. Here's just another way to look at things. Take a look at the influence. Is rain bad? Well, probably if you're in New York City trying to get a taxi, it's really bad. In San Francisco, trying to get a taxi, it was really bad. I can remember going there with my wife and it started to rain and she said, oh, we were walking because we like to walk. We were walking across town and she said, oh, it's starting to rain. We should get a taxi. And I said, hey, it's starting to rain. We're not going to get a taxi. Yeah, maybe an hour, right? You could go find a shelter, go to a Starbucks, call for a taxi, sit down, have coffee, have something to eat, relax, talk a little bit, read a book. The taxi will show up and then you can go. Takes forever. There's too many taxis because you see them all the time sitting around until the rain hits and then there's not enough taxis. So I'm sure it's the same way. I don't know, but I would imagine it's pretty much similar in New York. So changes like that upset the apple cart. We have to then deal with things. We're right now dealing with things and it's not going to just stop overnight, not just going to go away. It may get a far more complicated, right? And all you have to do is read a little bit of history. I don't like history, but unfortunately, at my age, I'm a piece of history. So if you look at a little bit of history, you start to see these changes have repeated themselves over and over again in a lifetime of humans on the planet. There's books on it, there's statistics on it, there's lots of data out there. I'm not even beginning to get into the scope of any of that. I'm not trying to sell an ism because those ideas talk about the same thing from a different viewpoint every 10, 15 years, they change, right? I've been around long enough to see a couple of those changes. So I'm just saying, as we move forward, what I'm starting to do, I'm starting to say, here's the variables. We really need to go and look at the range, because no matter what, if we're in a really narrow range of view and people throw things at us that doesn't fit in our package, it's useless to us. It's totally useless, right? And then we start to think whatever they're tossing at us is relevant to our package. And that just drives fear. It's like it's, I get people, friends of mine from Southern California, they talk about a little mold in their house. And I go, do you guys have mold up there? And I said, do we have mold up there? The whole Northwest is nothing but mold, but it's not a problem because it's moldy, right? I mean, we get mold every winter. My fence gets all green every winter. I got to go out there with a little bit of vinegar and wash it every spring. So the fact that I don't have any problem in my bathroom because I clean it at least every week. I spray it and there's no mold. But I can understand because I lived in Southern California, I didn't have to go through all that spraying and all that stuff because mold didn't happen very often. And when it did, it was like, wow, someone left a window open or it was a moist day or there was a bigger story about it. Up here, it's normal. So the world is changing. There's a new norm, right? Maybe I moved into it, but maybe you're just starting to discover it's moved into you. And it's not a problem. We just have to deal with it. The range had to get bigger. I had to find a way to deal with it. I had to find, right? You drive around up here in the spring and you see lots of mold on roofs that have to, my neighbor's roof and his shed is all green. Mine's next door to him on the other side of the fence, and my roof's not all green because every year I spray it and clean it. And every year he doesn't. So in a year or two, he's going to lose his roof because it's going to start to lift and leak. And you know, can I go over and tell him? He's not going to listen. He doesn't have, I have talked to him. He's like, yeah. So it's fine. For another $3,000, he can buy another shed in a year or two. And it's not a big deal, right? Do you understand? There's not like, there's only one solution. There's a lot of different things we can do. But we really need to get it into a focus. We don't have to be so scattered. Being scattered is the problem. We really need to get it down. That's why I preach meditation. I preach singularity of focus. I preached reading diversity of books, going to different musical events, going to a concert here, going to the symphony here, tasting different things, changing food. I have for the last 30 or 40 years added a new food into my diet every year. And lots of times I delete foods, right? As I learn more about my change in health, then I start to say, oh, I can't eat so much of that anymore. Well, I'll do this instead. Right? You need to know you and know that you're in a state of change. Don't make it a religion. It's not about I am. It's about, oh, right now I'm in this swing. Oh, okay, cool. I can adhere to that and not make it a struggle. This talks about the struggle. I'm told that in Buddhism, the struggle comes from a term that meant the wheel has in the center, the hub is out of round. It's moved over. So the wheel kind of oscillates when you're going down the road. It's a bumpy ride. So we're in a bumpy ride right now. We're in the middle of a struggle. The centering for us is out of balance to the turn of the wheel. It's just really simple put. No, I'm not a Buddhist, but you know, I've got a few statues around the Buddha. What the heck, you know? So not that it's bad. I don't have a problem with it. I've got a lot of friends that are Buddhists. No problem. I'm just trying to say that the truth in everything is relevant to everybody to some relative degree, not an absolute piece. We've got to look at all those things as how is that truth relative to me, rather than how is that truth a demand on me. The demand produces a huge amount of stress and a health challenge, and the world is full of demands. And we really need to be able to get healthy and get a wider range, which means it's not a demand to go here. It's a piece that fits somewhere out here. We just need to step over and find it and put it away, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so thank you very much. It's been a joy in talking because I talk a lot. And so I'm open to questions, most certainly. Chris at wizardscatch.com, just send me an email. It's Chris, CHRISS at wizardscatch.com. And I'd be glad to throw you into my Q&A with answers. I've got a couple of them. I was out of town for a couple of months. I'm back doing a few talks. I'll do a couple in this next week or two. And so anyway, enjoy the experience of life right now. It's hopefully, I'd like to tell you it's going to get better, but I actually probably would be more inclined to think that it's probably going to be rocky for quite a little while. That's just the way it's going to be. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. So thank you very much.